What if I told you that the rent just keeps on climbing up in Australia? And many people are blaming migrants. More people means higher rent. But the deeper truth is, the rental crisis isn't just about who's coming in. It's about what government did and didn't do. It's about us Australians expect from homes, and it's about a system built on preferences for detached houses, slow approvals, and too few builders. The first one on the list is public housing. Public or social housing has long been the safety net of renters. But in Australia, the share of public housing has actually shrunk. For example, in Australia, at 30 June 2024, there were 452,000, but a large part of this community housing are not your traditional social housing. In fact, public housing household numbers have fallen from 314,916 houses in 2015 to 286,227 in 2024. That means even if the population actually grew during these times, the number of social housings has decreased. The government used to own and build all these social housings, but now it's all the private sector. Because you have to think about it. If the government started building social housings, then the private sector would have the government as their main competitor. In fact, back in the days, when government was increasing the number of social housing, home ownership actually increased. But years or decades of lobbying from private sector actually changed the whole system, which is why a lot of Australians now don't have any kind of social housing. Second on our list is labor or trade shortages and construction cost. This is another major factor because when you're building a new accommodation, you need builders, tradespeople, and approvals. But Australia is facing a critical shortage on these trades. Skilled trades like tiling, roofing, and bricklaying are in short supply this year. One report states that labor supply has been driven by higher labor. Because of that, cost of building has soared. Higher cost on labor and higher cost on materials reduced how many rental accommodations are built in just 1 year. And some of you guys may have seen this in the news that a lot of building companies has gone under over the past 5 years. So supply tightens, rentals have become scarce, and that pushes the rents up. The way we could actually solve this is, one, by increasing the number of people that's working on these trades. But a lot of Australians picked not doing this because it's not a glamorous job. So if you really want to have a solution, then my suggestion is it's probably better to be the solution instead of just complaining about the problem. Otherwise, the other solution would be a double-edged sword where the government and companies would take people overseas to do these trades, which increases the number of population and causes an increase or a big spike in demand for rental crisis. And let's be honest, guys, it's not like trades are not getting paid good money. They actually are. So for all the young people in Australia who wants to make good money and become the solution of the housing crisis, might as well pick up a trade. Third on our list is NIMBY or housing preference. NIMBY is the abbreviation. NIMBY means not in my backyard. Why aren't more apartment buildings being built in locations that has a lot of population? The reason are the people who already have properties under their belt. They wouldn't want to have apartment buildings built right next to their property because of a few reasons. One of the reasons would be is apparently it deteriorates the value of their properties. And the second thing is with high density accommodations like this means that it will slow down the traffic and cause a lot of noise when they're coming in and out of the apartment buildings. So in my opinion, the people who's actually already in the property market are causing the supply to slow down. Another thing on this section is the housing preference of Australians. In one study, it shows that 84% of Australians prefer detached houses over apartments. The truth is, regardless if there's migration or not, if the population keeps on growing, that there's always gonna be people that's gonna be pushed out of a location. But if you don't want to move out of the location, then you need to make sure that you are going to think of other alternatives such as apartments. Fourth on the list is government bottlenecks and policy failures. There are structural issues too. Building new rental accommodation needs land release, zoning change, and fast approvals. But Australia has approval delays, slow release on new lands, and regulatory complexities. One article even says land release are 33% below 10-year average. This only means that back in the days, they released more new lands to accommodate the number of demand. But now, it seems like the government is causing the supply problem. The National Housing Supply and Affordability Council says the country is behind its target of 1.2 million houses by 2029. And part of the problem is planning and approval slowdowns. So the result is, even if there's demand, policies are slowing down the increase of supply. So more people, including migrants, are hitting the rental market and competing for new homes. Fifth on the list, which is the main topic of this series, is mass migration. But you have to remember, it's not the only cause. Yes, a surge in population increases the demand in rentals, but migration is not the only cause for Australia's rental supply shortage. The real cause is the slower growth in supply, especially social and public stock, low to high density developments, and trade shortages. When the supply of rental homes, especially the affordable ones, remains static while population grows, the pressure mounts. But the blame should not fall into the new migrants, but it should be directed to the failed system that can't keep up. The narrative that migrants caused the high rents may be accurate. However, regardless if there's new migrants or not, if a population of a country keeps on growing and the system that's built around the housing market is not in line to increase the supply, then it will always happen regardless if there's new migrants or not. The government continues to pursue high migration just to increase the gross domestic product or the overall economy of this country, but they fail to support the infrastructure that's needed for this new growing population.
As a reminder that all of our policy debates about housing today are only likely to change the housing story over the long term. A housing problem that took a generation to create could take a generation or more to fix, unless our housing market makes a painfully sharp adjustment.
So what are the impacts of these reasons towards renters? For renters, this means less choice, higher competition, more fear of being bumped out, and fewer affordable units. Because social housing share didn't grow while demand increased, more people are forced to private rentals with high prices. Because high-density approvals are blocked by NIMBYism and preferences, inner city supply remains constrained. Because construction trades are few, the new rentals get built at a slower pace, and those costs get passed on. So the result is not just more people are arriving, but a shortage of homes relative to need, policy that didn't keep pace, and cultural preferences that blocked solutions. If we're going to fix the rental crisis, then we need a shift on three things. Number one is policy and supply side action. More investment in social housing, fast approvals, and more rentals for high-density apartments. Number two is change in preference. People should decide accepting apartments in high-density areas rather than insisting on detached houses. Number three is trade and construction capacity. We need more apprentices, more retained tradespeople, and fewer companies failing because of cost blowouts. Migration will always cause an increase in demand, but if supply keeps up, then there's not going to be any issue. The rental crisis we're in, it's not just because of migration. It's because of a system where the government stopped building social housing, where local preferences block density, and where construction can't keep pace. And that's it for our video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.